Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is Monday, January, February, March, April 19th. Um, so yeah, let's hop into the game. I think I actually did play a little bit after Friday to get some of the daily quests done, but the whole weekend has passed and certainly that means we have new daily quests and uh, new video game news. Although, even starting fairly late for the way my sleep schedule's been going for the past couple of weeks, uh, there really hasn't been that much new news. So we'll cover it fairly quickly. Over the weekend, I did manage to schedule one thing, but honestly, that scheduling could have been improved. We're having network trouble right off the bat. Hmm. Uh, let's see. And do we want to re-roll this for Bloodcraft, Portalcraft? I guess we do. Yeah. So I need to do more scheduling in general, but then also a lot of the visual novel stuff that I've pre-recorded is done in long runs of 2 or 3 hour episodes, when in all honesty I should have made those hour-long episodes so that I could stretch that out even longer amongst the air days. So I'm falling behind, and that's an issue, certainly. uh, let's open the pack. I've been playing pinball still and getting deeper and deeper into pinball, just like tons of finding YouTubers playing pinball. Learned quite a bit about how the new stir and spike system seems to be pretty garbage and overpriced. Quite a bit about how people that repair pinball machines and own pinball machines are not comfortable with the idea of surface mounted LEDs or surface mounted components in general, because they are only used to doing like through hole soldering at the smallest, and surface mount rework requires just a whole different hot air gun and and let's open some of these packs, I suppose, too. At least one of these. You need a hot air rework station. You need flux. You need a reflow heater to do surface mounted stuff. And that's just newer technology, smaller technology. You need better magnifiers, but steadier hands. Um, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's kind of a significant number of people who, in the old days, could have gotten away with changing bulbs on a pinball machine by simply unscrewing a bulb and screwing in a new bulb, that all of a sudden are now being required to solder LEDs, and they're just not comfortable with it. Although I think you could design a pinball table fairly easily these days just to use off-the-shelf LED strips, so that you wouldn't have to specifically replace much of anything. You could just cut out the one bad LED and solder 4 connectors back together if you need to, or uh, just shift the whole thing. Because if the places where the lights need to light up are at the exact same distance from each LED on an LED off the shelf strip, then, and if one of those bulbs goes out, you could simply shift the whole strip and just move it down the line. So let's say there was 250 LEDs on a strip, you could have easily 20 40 LEDs just hanging off the edge of a long run, and that would fix your problem a lot easier. And that's not that's not anywhere as difficult as potentially taking a circuit board off and replacing one LED on the circuit board. Or at least to my mind it seems somewhat simpler. So what pinballs did I play? Well, the most recent one I played, let's see if I can go backwards here. Wow, that was a considerably small amount of extra cards that I just got, considering how I opened 3 packs there. So, a lot of new cards, I guess. Scared Stiff, which is Elvira's second game, I played, and it's alright, but some of the late game elements on that are kind of crazy, and I think Elvira and the Party Monsters probably is a better experience. Before Scared Stiff, I played Safecracker, which I think Safecracker is a pretty awful game. I also, after last stream on Friday, managed to the day reset, so I played another one of these free entries just for the fun of it. And I just played Haven Tournament, and that just makes a lot of sense. I need to rebuild every deck with whatever closest I can match to a tournament winner. So we're at least within the ballpark of having decks that actually feel like they can win. Yeah, Safecracker is a more narrow than average pinball table, which basically puts it to a point where there's only 3 shots on the entire table that are of any importance, and they try to make it somewhat difficult to get to those 3 shots, but you don't have a limit of balls. Instead, you have a time limit for your game, and it says at the beginning you have 45 minutes, which would be extremely generous. I wish I had this character. I don't wonder what this is from. I don't recognize that from like any anime or anything. So at the beginning of the game it says you have 45 minutes to play, and after the 45 minutes, the alleged 45 minutes, you then are in sudden death and you can keep on playing. Hanamaru Kinikida. I don't recognize that at all. But the truth is, you have about 2 minutes and 15 seconds. Or just about exactly 2 minutes and 15 seconds to play before it goes into sudden death, and you can then try to keep the ball in play. But any balls that drain before then just relaunch, but there's a slight delay between a ball launching and the draining. So there's still some downtime there of maybe half a second. There are ways to stop the clock, as it were, and extend the clock, but they're fairly difficult and don't work particularly well. Let's go ahead and do this. Safecracker has this computerized robotic female voice, which I always like to see a female voice actress get some work in pinball, because they kind of are non-existent otherwise. But half of her lines when you set up for multi-ball are stolen direct copies from Funhouse. Way more than what feels like an homage. It's just the exact same line said by a different actress. And she doesn't have any real call-outs because there aren't any real shots on the table, and there probably are a few call-outs, but nothing amazing. And then the only other characters is a robotic dog, a security dog, and a cop, a security guard, who you get donuts for, and I'm not even sure what the donuts really are doing. But the big selling point, or I'd say the 2 selling points, are some very rare actions will have the game eject a collectible coin And when you get the collectible coin, you get also a credit to play a completely different game mode that has absolute zero business being separated out and should just be integrated into the main game. It's just like a 90-second 6-ball multi-ball or something along that line. And that's called the Assault on the Bank mode, which, like, there's no reason why that shouldn't have just been another multi-ball mode that you played. But on top of getting the collectible coins, if you start the main goal of the game, which is kind of like you start a multi-ball, and then when the multi-ball locks, when the multi-ball is done, like I don't really even remember. Like, I know that you sometimes got a 3-ball multi-ball, and then sometimes you would start the board game on the backboard, and I guess maybe those aren't integrated at all. And those are just two separate things that happen.
I will rise again.
So yeah, yeah, there's this board game that it is that game, which I often think is called Parcheesi, if it's not really called Parcheesi. It's the game where you go, well, Trouble might be another comparison, but Trouble's more complicated. It's a game where you have four tokens. They go around one circle rotation, and then they go up towards the center lane. It's basically that board, except for you have only one position and you're moving towards the center. And the pinball game that you played before the board game unlocks 1 to 4 or 0 to 4 volts, and that determines how far around the circle you have to go. And the number of steps you make are just randomized by the LCD screen. So there's there's not 100% board game mechanics in it. So really, when you're playing this board game, you're going left flip for a fast spin or right flip for a slow spin. Doesn't seem like it really affects anything. Seems like it's pretty random either way. There are several different things to land on, which compared to like the Game of Life digital game that I played recently, at least there is something new on each landing spot. Some of the negative things that can happen are you can alert the guard, and then the guard will start from wherever you started behind you and try to catch up to you. Or you can
I shall give birth to a new world.
let's see.
Who will pardon my sins?
Let's see. This one. And then this one. And this one. It's probably overhit kill. So you can alert the guard. You can activate the guard dog. If you activate the guard dog, you've dropped out of the board game and have to play the pinball game some more to get back to the board game. Or you can make it to the center and win. There are Safecracker is an incredibly low scoring table, so you want to increase the amount you get when you get inside the safe crack, the safe. But yeah, it just feels incredibly rushed out and overhyped, and there's just like no real reason in my mind that table should have even been any curation for Pinball Arcade. They did program it, and I will applaud that, so that you can collect all the coins, but looking at it from 10 feet away on my monitor, I can't really see any details on the coins, or enough to even be able to tell you what the coins are supposed to symbolize or show. The coins get ejected out of a box on top of the top glass and roll down the glass, so if that were to actually happen while you were playing pinball, I imagine you would be incredibly distracted and drain the balls out completely. The idea of infinite balls for 2.5 minutes, it's a good idea, but frankly, if you're going to try and be generous around that idea, the next logical step would be to say 2.5 minutes on factory defaults, then you get 3 balls. So the first ball just goes for a very long time, so that you have a normal video game experience in that. But there is really no reason to make the player look up the board. Elvira's Scared Stiff, it's just called Scared Stiff, also has you looking up at the board for a spinner, and at the very least that's fairly short, although they do have an in-game goal where they want you to do it quite a bit. Let's see. 1 enemy damage. Alright. I think I'm gonna just go ahead and do this. That way we heal more. But yeah, when you look up at the board on Scared Stiff, you're just up there for half a second spinning the spinner. A roulette wheel, effectively, in the form of a spider. Safecracker, you could be playing for 5 minutes on that backboard. I think it probably was a promotion table more than anything, trying to promote a actual board game named Safecracker that I would assume actually existed. But I wouldn't be surprised if that actually had worked pretty poorly as a promotion. I could see having a Monopoly board on the back glass of a Monopoly pinball table, and then that would, just for viewers and people not actually playing the game, be the way that people saw your progress. But I would say all the trading, all the buying of land, all the rolling of dice, all around, going, collecting $200, all of that on a Monopoly table, if I was going to design one, would be happening on the actual pinball table. And it would be happening very, very loose and non-consistent with the actual rules of Monopoly. But, and yeah, Hasbro could probably make a pinball table based on every single board game if they wanted to, but I'm not sure. They need to do that since they've already got video games of the board games that exist, and those are more direct translations where pinball would have to take a lot of artistic license. Like, if you look at Pinbot could easily be translated into something like Battleship. So before Safecracker was an excellent table, and it was what? Well, I know it was an excellent table, but I can't remember it, which really says something terrible about my memory. It wasn't Theater of Magic that played that a couple days ago and already talked about Theater of Magic. It would be really nice if I could just look up the list, but no super easy way to do that. Actually, there is kind of a fairly easy way to do that. I could just bring up Steam and look at my most recent achievements. There we go. Junkyard. Yeah, and before that I played Whodunit. Like Whodunit, I think I already talked about too. Junkyard really is a great table. It takes a fairly large risk. And it kind of is the, in my opinion, opposite argument as far as removing elements from a pinball table and doing it right, compared to Safecracker, which I think just did it completely wrong. In the fact that Junkyard has this big empty round arena at the top center playfield of the table, and hanging in the center of that is a crane with a pinball welded to a chain, and your main goal is to hit that wrecking ball, which to hit a second row above the first row of standing targets on the back half of that arena. And so you're all about the center shots on Junkyard, with the exception of the times you're not about the center shots and you're trying to hit the two ramps on the left, and there's a sinkhole and a pop-up. Yeah, I think there's a sinkhole on the right, and maybe no ramps on the right, but I didn't really feel like it was missing anything there. But yeah.
Too bad.
Let's go ahead and end the turn. But yeah, with the exception of a few things that you can get on the side. I believe there's like 3 standing targets also at the far left, lower left of the playfield. You are trying to hit that wrecking ball, and the more times you hit the wrecking ball and get it to bounce and hit the upper standing targets, which look like cars, so you're wrecking cars, you spell multi-ball, and when you've got multi-ball completely spelled, you unlock the multi-ball. There is also a center lane shot that is directly in line with the wrecking ball, so you have to either, in certain modes, raise the crane so that the wrecking ball is actually hovering above the table where the ball can go under it, or you have to get the ball to actually curve around or bounce around more accurately. You really can't put English on pinballs, or spin. If a pinball is spinning, something really weird has happened. But yeah, let's kill this first.
Well, on to the next project.
And then do, I guess, a couple of these. It's a little premature to play those. So yeah, you've got to sneak the ball in through that center shot, or raise the crane for that center shot. That's where your jackpots are. The main goal of Junkyard is that you have an angel and a devil on your shoulder, and they tell you 2 different targets to shoot to collect 2 different pieces of junk. There's 10 pieces of junk in total that you need to collect to get to the final game wizard mode. But if you get certain pieces of junk in combination, you unlock more game modes. So you start with a toaster, so if you get a hair dryer, then you get a toast gun, and that lets you shoot the junkyard dog with pieces of toast. They didn't want to shoot the junkyard dog with an actual gun, which is fair enough.
There is not a soul without sin.
My blade
So
is your salvation.
that activates the second
Let judgment fall.
video mode, but there is actually a video mode before that video mode where if you
You're in good hands.
launch the ball into the doghouse sinkhole, and there's a ton of like 3D models and toys on Junkyard's playfield, and what's nice is they look great and probably would look great even in a real world table because they don't get hit. Unlike Theater of Magic, where you have a treasure chest that's being hit by the pinball, like everything in Junkyard is usually not hit, with the exception of the wrecking ball.
Never fear! Your hypersonic gal is here!
But yeah, if you sink into the junkyard dog hole before you have the toast gun, you have to run
At the end.
from the dog in a video mode. After that, you shoot the toast at the dog as he's chasing after a woman who just ran out of a bathtub and has a towel around her. And then there's a cuckoo clock and a TV, I believe, to get a radar to unlock one mode, and then there is a bathtub and some wheels to make a jalopy to unlock one road, and then you need to add a propeller to the bathtub and the wheels to make a flying machine to unlock another mode, and then you need to add a fishbowl to make to the bathtub and the wheels to make a submarine to unlock another mode. So there's like 5 different mission modes that you have to do before you can get to the final battle. And like a lot of wizard modes and final battle modes in pinball tables, fairly impossible to actually accomplish that legitimately. You've got to be a really good player who gets all the shots, knows what shots to take, and doesn't let the ball drain out randomly. But it did seemed like eventually if I put months of practice into a table, I could accomplish Jackpot's thing. There is something nice about just having an aspirational final goal in pinball anyways, because you don't want to like do everything in the first hour and be bored with it, which is something that can happen with video games, and it's certainly something that can happen with bad pinball tables too. I kind of wish there was more of a split between whether you listen to the angel or the devil, because in reality it doesn't matter whether you listen to the angel or the devil, because they both point you towards junk, and you need to get all the junk at the end of the day anyways. But having 2 hosts effectively doing the call outs and doing the voice lines is nice, and if that's what it took in 1995 or 96, whenever Junkyard came out, I think it was 95, if that's what it took to let a female be a voice actress on a table, is that they had to be paired with a male, at least that's slight progress. We see the same thing in Red and Ted's pinball table, where in that one it's way more blatantly obvious that they added a male voice actor for no good reason. Alright. One thing I will say about Whodunit is Whodunit has a very frustrating elevator gimmick right in the middle of the road, the playfield, where you shoot a ball upward and then it spins up to a higher level and then down one of 3 ramps, and whether you hit the left ramp or the right ramp or the center ramp determines whether you go up or down an elevator. So you have to get that center ramp shot perfect really to get to all the different levels. Otherwise, you're going to have quite a frustrating time. Let's do this. Why did that not do damage? Thought that would have done damage. I should have not played 2 of those for sure. But yeah. Whodunit outside of the elevator, taking up a vast amount of the center lane shots. Again, kind of in the opposite direction of Junkyard. Junkyard is this big round arena where if you shoot up the center lane but slightly off to the left or right, you're going to hit a standing target and that's it. You're not going to get major success that way. But you also aren't going to be horribly punished, which Whodunit is fairly punishing in that upper ramp because it kind of sets you back through the ramps to either the left or right in lanes, which means you just then end up shooting the same shot again. And then there is a very high focus on Whodunit to hit a ramp to the left of the center shots where a flashing telephone is, and the flashing telephone shot is just used for everything. It's way overused. But yeah, I really feel like I'm undersinging the praises of Junkyard. It really is one of those games that's great for new kids and new players. I think the practice, the center shot, it's got a great gimmick. It's very nicely polished. It's very nicely designed with the 2 video modes. To the point where, as I'm trying to think of what a top 10 list is, I think I kind of put Junkyard in the 2nd place. I still think Theater of Magic is better, but I put it in like 3rd place because I still think Star Trek The Next Generation is a little bit better. It's a little bit more varied than Junkyard is Star Trek The Next Generation. But then Junkyard, and then Funhouse, because Funhouse definitely does have some problems, even though it's referenced quite a bit by other Bailey tables, Valley tables. Okay. We could do this, which I think that fixes a big problem. And then we could do this.
It looks like I'm up.
And then
Wings of light, show your might.
we can do this. We should win. Like 1 to 25, I think I've got this. If he turns this around and wins, I'll be amazed. But yeah, I would have somebody play Junkyard probably before I'd have them play Theater of Magic, just because Theater of Magic is more complicated, but more complicated should be better in quality ratings, all other things being similar. Nothing's going to be equal in pinball. Well, I think that's probably as much catch-up as I have to say. I spent a lot of time playing a lot of tables. I spent like 2 hours playing Safecracker and I didn't even like it. So let's go through the video game news and work through all the games that have come out in the hopes that maybe I can regain some time. I also spent the weekend doing Lego set, the Lego Ideas Sesame Street set, which in retrospect I feel like was a mistake in a small part for me to buy, because I don't know anything about Sesame Street. And I realized that as I was putting it together. I'm like, who is this fairy? Abby Cadabby. Never heard of that. Who are a lot of characters. There's kind of a lack of minifigs and then a lot of stickers in the set to make up for that. So you'll have pictures of like Snuffleupagus because they didn't want to make a Snuffleupagus minifig. Or Hooper, which Hooper kind of makes sense that you wouldn't have a minifig of an actor who actually died, Mr. Hooper. But then, like Count, the Count, for instance, is he just called the Count, or is he called something else? I think he's just called the Count. Is kind of non-existent, and instead they give you a bat and a sticker of him. Like other characters like Guy Smiley are on the TV, and I kind of get why you wouldn't have that. There are 2 or 3 newer characters that have been added. Kind of a shockingly small number of female Muppets on Sesame Street over the years. I think in part because they had a decent number of female actors. I think a lot of the puppeteers happen to be gay and maybe they just didn't think of that. And there literally might also be a felt effect where you can't, with felt, make a Muppet and give it boobs without it coming out incredibly round or incredibly pokey or perky. And so if you were going to have a young girl Muppet, you either make it look exactly like a young boy Muppet. There was a baby Muppet, like Baby Natasha, who is a female, but yeah. But yeah, generally all of the Sesame Street puppets are supposed to be so young anyways. I think Big Bird is still supposed to be like 3 years old or so. Something that they're not supposed to really age. So that might be fine. They have Cookie Monster as a minifig, and Elmo and Bert and Ernie and Big Bird. So they got a decent collection of the characters, and it would really be Oscar the Grouch is not a minifig, but he's built out of bricks in his trash can. So I feel like a lot of Lego sets probably could have an addendum element. Pay another $20 and we'll give you this collection of minifigs. And instead what they usually do is they have characters like that in blind box elements. Kermit the Frog hasn't been on Sesame Street in quite a long time, so it's not super surprising that he's missing. But like Grover is missing. I don't think he's been on Sesame Street in a long time either.
The world ends.
So all of it kind of makes sense, but there's also some weirdness to the winners and the losers. Yeah, do we want to keep on playing? Here we go.
You're in good hands.
I don't think any more restorative defenses will do anything. So yeah, but the set for itself is really just a set of Sesame Street, which is really just a TV set. So there's definitely a lot of angles that don't have walls, and the inside sets are tried to be done. So you see inside Elmo's house, and you see inside Bert and Ernie's house, and inside Mr. Hooper's house, and an apartment above Mr. Hooper's store, which is I guess for the count. But there really isn't a lot of building there. I think if you compare it to like the Flintstones set, the Flintstone had to have a lot more thought to it to build a Flintstone house versus that. There is more detail in the Sesame Street set, but I bet the Sesame Street is also more expensive. It definitely feels like there should be a whole second set that just backs up to the first set of Sesame Street. Arguably, Sesame Street should, at some point, like rebuild its entire set and rebuild the entire iconic street to look different. But I don't know how you pull that off and not irritate a lot of people. Let's see.
Look to the zenith, for there I will rise.
I'm hoping
I'm already a
that
proper lady, you know.
this
Someone call tech support.
plus this
You're in good hands.
plus this
You're in good hands.
should be enough to win.
Would you call yourself a fan?
But see, I probably haven't learned my lesson as far as Lego either, because I am just about to buy later today or tomorrow the Lego Disney print castle, which is super huge and super expensive, but it's really the only way to get the Disney minifigs, or it was. Maybe it isn't so much now, but it would still be the only way to get a nice big castle. And arguably, I do know a little bit more about Disney than I do Sesame Street. And if there ever was a future set of Muppet characters, which I don't even know what that would be, then I think that might work very well with Sesame Street. Well, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to pause this stream, so I'll be back in about 20 minutes, I would say. So, sorry. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. Let's get back into the arena game. Break my stride with 1 hour remaining. So yeah, we should just go through the video game news. My timer's gonna be all messed up, but I generally know I'd been streaming for about 45 minutes before this. So let's go through this. Here we have a game on Steam called Sagehead, which is just one of those mobile phone games where you're trying to bounce an arrow to hit a target, or bounce something to hit something. $4.24 English, allegedly full audio. That definitely is not making any, not gonna make anything. So, an hour ago, YouTube CEO Susan Wojcicki puts out this this tweet where she gets this award for promoting free speech. Unfortunately, that video apparently only has 6 upvotes, last I heard, and 2,000 downvotes because YouTube and Susan Wojcicki does not promote free speech at all. And they sponsored this First for All Freedom Forum presentation themselves. So it's there's no charitable way to put it. It's basically she paid, or YouTube paid for Susan Wojcicki to win an award, a self-aggrandizing award in the category that they are known for being about the worst at. The only argument I could even see being made, and it would have to be spelled out greatly, way better than it was, is that maybe in some instances YouTube does not kowtow to the worst of like North Korea demanding censorship worldwide, which there are a few countries like that where they literally have said, we want this YouTube censored worldwide. We want all of YouTube censored. We want this specific video censored worldwide. That's as charitable as possible as I can be for YouTube protecting First Amendment and free speech, which free speech should be talked about. First Amendment is kind of pointless, confusing element to it,
Back straight, eyes forward.
because free speech is a bigger concept that should apply to all people of humanity, not just people in the United States. But yeah, the idea that YouTube hasn't allowed itself to be at least a tool, if not a glad-handing supporter of censorship, is kind of ridiculous. It's totally ridiculous. And at the very least, they should be honest about it instead of up their own butts with just insanity. I was looking at a video reviewing something completely unrelated to video games, so it's not even point. There's no point in mentioning it, but the review of this other video really pointed it out to say, yeah, this is just solipsism at a certain point. The idea that you're are like God and everyone around you is simply your own imagination or creation. You're the only important the only important being. Solipsism is an exaggerated way of saying it, certainly, where it might just be being self-absorbed, but yeah. Susan Wojcicki and CEO is clearly self-absorbed. But what's also funny is we know that they hear these messages and they just ignore them completely. They just go, they just smile and nod when people are telling them that what they're doing is wrong, and then they go for a little circle jerk sessions, I imagine, after the fact, and then do whatever they were going to do in the first place. And when you have a situation like that, the unfortunate solution to something like that would be government regulation. And I think for something as big as YouTube, if it's not going to be broken up as the monopoly that it is, which honestly it probably should be, if YouTube was broken up to the point where, like, music videos and all other videos were split into 2 separate companies, completely not owned by Alphabet, completely not owned by Google, that would be a good start. I don't know if you need to at some point split it up into video games and other kinds of videos. Like, should there be a separate, would there be enough of a market to make an argument to break up like makeup tutorials compared to compared to like rapping videos or just chatting videos. Like, it might get a little too crazy, and there might be a dozen or other smaller services at that point, and that doesn't serve the audience well. We don't want to turn YouTube into 200 extended cable channels, but we would like to potentially turn it into 4 over-the-air TV stations. And inherently, I wouldn't be surprised if YouTube was forced to break up as a monopoly. I wouldn't be surprised if the 4 major TV stations each decided to buy one of the parts of YouTube. Well, that's a crazy card. Alright, well, we need to win quick then. What can we do to ensure
Look to the zenith, for there I will rise.
hope that I already had that set.
Today we'll lift some heavy scriptures. My blade is your salvation.
Embrace them in your fiery gale, solar wind.
See, I feel like he's
The doctor away.
He's got a whole card combination here that's going to have him draw 5 cards. So yeah, we kind of start off talking about news, and yet again we have a YouTube sucks story, because anytime you do hear anything about YouTube, it is pretty much a YouTube sucks story, which sucks.
Magic I need.
I mean, I can try to make some good news. Somebody did subscribe to my channel. Yay. 1 more subscriber. That's always nice, but I don't know how much you really get from that otherwise. Okay, let's see. Well, play this to here, and then play
I
this
shall give birth to a new world.
wheel there, and then we can play this to do this.
A Faraday keeps the doctor away.
Evolve that.
Light, show your might.
Major Nelson, Larry Herb, tweeted out an hour ago, calling audio aficionados rolling out to preview this week. Try pass-through for higher fidelity auto with your favorite media apps, which I assume this is just HDMI pass-through of higher codecs, but you kind of would like to figure out what codecs are actually being used on this screen. I was just wrecked because he managed to draw all the cards. PlayStation has decided not to shut down the PS3 and PS Vita online services. I suspect they had not done enough due diligence as far as their contracts, and they found out that they were contractually obliged. And I would almost certainly guess that sooner than you think these stores will get shut down anyways. But also, I imagine the backlash affected a few things. And by the way, you have to win 4 games to make it to the higher ranks. The A turn team there, which I think maybe I've gotten 3 games in total ever. So I guess that is slightly good news. For my personal PlayStation 3, which just sits around to be a Blu-ray player, I still think it is probably past the point where it would make a lot of sense to hack it and have RetroArch on it. That would make a lot more sense for its usefulness than it sitting around and doing nothing, since
A dazzling
the
victory awaits.
last time I actually
I'll chill you
put
to
a
the
Blu-ray
bone.
into a player was probably a decade ago. Yeah. In a funny way, I've kind of become a slave to my collection of my anime DVDs at this point, where it's not probably something I would want to give away, and I'd have to know somebody that I could really trust, because almost certainly, even if I gave it to a big, high, like long-term anime fan, somebody that was as old as me and has been a fan as long as me, or longer, I can't with full certainty be sure that they won't get bored of it and get rid of the DVDs themselves, throw them away, or give them away.
Uncharted desert awaits.
And so I have yet to hit that point where I can let go. And I probably won't ever hit that point, but also I would... Well, I don't know. There is that chance. There is a small possibility that when I hit a retirement age and retire completely from making YouTube videos, or if something happens where I can't make YouTube videos or play video games, then the anime DVDs are my kind of backup thought, whereas the Steam collection of games is the first thought as far as things that keep me busy for the rest of my life. And I still do have a slight concern that there literally just won't be enough to entertain me between now and the point at which I eventually die, because I'm burning through entertainment faster and faster and getting more and more efficient, doing 4 or 5 things at the same time. Sometimes.
White frost gather.
Anyways, moving back to video games, here we have another Winged Cloud Sakura game, Sakura Forest Girls this time, which they've got the anime girls this time with slight tans and forced tan tattoos. I don't really know how you would describe that, but it certainly is something I have seen before, is the, like, tanning marks. Sometimes you see it and it looks like it might have been some kind of magical birthmark. Sometimes you see it and it seems like it's very intentional. And yeah, it's a visual novel from Winged Cloud, $7.99, English and Chinese. What I think pretty much happens on all of these games is you get titillation and implied scenarios, but nothing more. You can see in the mature content description, it may not be appropriate for ages, and it may not be appropriate for viewing at work, and that's literally about the most generic, obtuse way you could describe anything. Like, you should be way more on the nose as far as whether it is or isn't appropriate. And you know the creators know whether it is or isn't appropriate. They just don't want to say because they're pulling some trickery.
Is your salvation.
There we go. Next, I wanted to talk about this. Now, Path of Exile came out on October 23rd, 2013, so it's not a new game, but it is kind of an MMO version of Diablo. And I watched the speed run of it, and I was watching people play it, and I'm going, oh, this is just Diablo. And so I was like, yeah, I'm kind of interested in it. Except for it's online, and I'm not really sure what the online aspect of it has to do with anything. So I was going through it, trying to figure out why it was online and what the deal with Path of Exile is, and why, even though it is mostly positive at 79%, and overall it's been overall very positive at 92%, why have I not heard more of it? I have put it on my wish list, but I can tell you right now I'm taking it off my wish list. And here's the problem. As we scroll down, we'll see that there is a major negative spike starting April 16th, April 17th, April 18th, April 19th. And I can tell you one good reason. Streamers get priority in this game. You will wait to log in and be number 75,000 in the queue and wait 30 to 90 minutes, but streamers have accounts flagged and get instant access. Don't blame the streamers, blame Grinding Gears Games, which is the developer of it. It goes on to say, on top of that, Grinding Gears Games has lost a lot of trust with the community. If certain accounts get one special privilege, like instant logins, how do you know other accounts aren't getting privileges? And apparently, since it is player versus player in some ways.
Witness the fury of my curse. Oh Lord.
What if this is not the end?
Here we can see another one. Has confirmed to fast track popular streamers through the login queues so the streamers can advertise the game. Game is so easy, I was bored after 4 acts. So let's see. So it's just a ton of negative reviews for this one unfairness, perceived unfairness in the game. As a new player, if you simply start playing the game at launch of any new league, your character will only ever be about 60-70% effective as it can be due to the blind spot of not understanding crafting and farming mechanisms from the previous 9 years of leagues. You will progress at a snail's pace compared to others, and most likely you won't even experience 50% of the game's total in-game content due to limitations of your historical knowledge. So apparently the leagues reset your characters. So yeah, it just does not feel like a game. Even though it says it's single player, it doesn't feel like a game that really is single player, which is a shame because it looked good. So if at some point maybe Grinding Gears Games made an actual single player experience that didn't require online and third-party accounts and balanced it for single player, I might be interested in coming back to us, but I doubt there's a real reason now to do that. We've seen also with Torchlight the same thing where you've had games that are like Diablo, but then some shenanigans happen that doesn't quite work. Another review also mentioned that the Steam version actually is worse than the standalone version, so it's kind of weird to potentially download the free-to-play version on Steam and then go download the other version and play it there. But yeah, it's kind of a shame. But what I did after that point is look at Steam's recommendation engine, which arguably Steam's recommendation engine is usually garbage. And there, we got another card pack and some rupees. We need to figure out what daily quests we're going to try and do. I should have started a private game when I took that break. Swordcraft or Shadowcraft and unranked. Let's go with that. Unranked, unlimited, Swordcraft. Swordcraft. So I went down to the more like this section and scrolled through this, trying to see what other games is Steam recommending that are like Path of Exile, and it recommended this 2016 game Grim Dawn, which for some reason is not on my follow list or my wish list, which I don't know why. That there is a problem, I think, that sucks about Path of Exile, that it looked very much like Diablo, whereas Torchlight didn't really look like Diablo and went very cartoony and kid-friendly with its art style. Grim Dawn looks mostly like Diablo, so I think it gets back to that idea. I also kind of wonder how many of these games would have full controller support. This one says it does. So why did I miss this? Because I guess I probably wasn't in the mood of, like, either I looked at this and this was reviewed fairly poorly. This one's at like 94% in the last 30 days. Or I just wasn't in the mood looking for a Diablo game. I could see myself, I don't know if this is a skill tree or what. Let's see. But Path of Exile had a skill tree that was very similar to this, where it just had tons and tons of dots. It may very well have been I just was not in the mood to play a Diablo game, and I thought to myself, if I was going to play a Diablo game, I'd just play Diablo. I think now in retrospect, with all the problems with Activision Blizzard, this makes a lot of sense. There is a slight problem on the price, because if you're going to get the definitive edition, you're paying $55 in a bundle. But yeah, I also wonder if this is one of those games where you might very well end up playing it over and over again, but still I don't think I could play this in replacement for Shadowverse or something, because it would just take a little it would just take way too long to play it and too much focus to play it. Like, the only negative review I even see for Grim Dawn is that this one review that says the game has the illusion of character builder freedom and avoid the forums. But everybody else is reviewing it positively, so I can't really decide over that. Of course, there is one more option as I'm thinking about this, and that would be this game, The Sloromancer, which is rated very positively and came out in 2021 versus 2016. This has more of a cartoony art style to it, but in a lot of ways it still is Diablo, but it's going with that flat 2D art style. You can see how the skill trees are getting fairly crazy in a lot of these games, which definitely highlights that Diablo 4, when it comes out, is going to have some crazy skill trees. Problem with this game is that it's early access, but it's only $15 too, so if this comes out of early access, maybe I play this and just move on with my life and don't bother to play Grim Dawn.
Let the clouds roll in.
Each one of those are possibilities, certainly. Depends on just how efficient I can be with my time and what I'm actually going to bother to do in general.
Just passing through.
Moving on, we have a game that did come out today, or relatively close to today, called the Holy Orange, which is an asset flip low effort game for $2.99. Let's see. Tech Raptor has an article. A game called Limnus Gate is releasing this summer and for next generation consoles. What kind of game is this? Looks like maybe a first person shooter game.
Your evil deeds end
Kind of
now.
looks like it might be, or I'd hate to call it a Battleborn clone, but what would you really call something that looks like it has guns and abilities from Borderlands? I guess maybe you just call it a Fortnite clone for the time being. Player versus player game in general.
Is that a human?
You're done for.
I'm done. I told you to leave.
That. Here we have a game on Steam called Freed Soft, which
Oh, why'd it have
looks
to be
like it's
clear
a...
day?
They're calling it an IT company simulator, but they didn't even capitalize IT. Early access for $8.99, English and Russian, almost certainly a low effort garbage game. This,
Don't stop singing until there's world peace.
evolve
It won't
this,
be long now. Corny. There's nothing
then
corny about my as my
hit
guitar
that.
gently beats.
go ahead and put that on the
Just
field,
like I said in my tip-off note. Easy does it.
and hit that. Let's see, Gamma Sutra has an article. An analyst says PS5's boast record console launch despite continuing supply issues. We kind of had already heard this. I don't know why this is really labeled as analyst colon though. I guess an actual analyst said it, but
Let me care for your
the
body.
analyst said it, I think, very much on behalf of the
You wouldn't.
interest of Sony, or at the behest of Sony.
I'm waiting to get up close and personal, darling.
It all ends here.
I have your heart in my sights.
An
Hit
honest day's
that,
work.
As my
That.
guitar gently beats.
Easy does
and
it.
that.
Stop!
See, Kimetsu has an article here. Netflix Castlevania animated series final season premieres May 13th. We had heard that this was going to be the final season with these characters, and then they were going to kind of try and look to have a spin-off season series with a whole new group of characters, which we already knew that like these two characters had gotten together, and I think she was pregnant by the time the end of the story had happened, so
Can't sing another note.
it clearly is going to be a whole nother generation. Alucard is almost certainly going to be alive for a whole nother generation, whether he's going to be a good guy or a bad guy, probably a bad guy, the way the last episode I saw was setting it up. Dracula and his wife are pretty much going to be missing, I think. And then the other vampire characters maybe play a role, maybe don't. And some of the other enemies. One of the problems I think that they really failed to do is slowly introduce enemies. So there were some major bosses in the boss rush of Castlevania as a game that were kind of completely thrown out there and then ignored. Well, this can do 14, or we can
And
save
honesty
ourselves
is
7.
work.
So let's save ourselves 7.
Gotcha.
Hit that and
Easy
that. And speaking of Capcom, I know that Capcom Content ID claimed one of my live streams. And they're claiming a teaser, which are not a trailer, which is advertisement, which is not copyrightable. Which, yeah, that would really suck if I had 1,000 subscribers and enough to watch time to be on the YouTube Partner Program, and I was getting maybe $10, $20 a week, and that got cut down to half of that because Capcom is violating copyright law or applying their interpretation of Japanese copyright law to an American company.
To be blessed.
That's not really fair. At the start of your turn, if this is the 10th turn or later, both characters draw 5 cards.
Collectible.
Easy does it.
And so then that would be a whole scenario where I'd have to fight Capcom, and then, like every Content ID claim, then they would immediately deny it and say, no, the illegal thing we're doing is totally legal, and you have to potentially threaten to sue them or give them all the information so they can stalk you or sue you. And Jim, if YouTube wants to pat themselves on the back and talk about how they promote free speech, the first thing they need to do is fix the Content ID blocking element at the very least, let alone the Content ID issue in general. Alright.
Fear not, for I am here.
Rush.
Is that a human? I told you to leave.
Easy
Now
does it.
that I envy you.
Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam, an Orc's Tale Chris Gruff, which that sounds like a Russian word.
The pleasure was all mine.
And this looks like a ugly RPG game. Free to play, German only. So I guess maybe that's a German word. We won, so we should keep on playing. Do I want to talk about a Kickstarter game? Probably not, but TechRaptor has this article, Vocabulantis and the Language Barrier, how it broke through. This looks like it's a platforming game where you've got a couple of characters that are
You must die.
maybe stop motion and cutscenes
Father, come on.
working together, and that maybe they don't speak. Although, honestly, I'm not sure this character even is in the game, or if you're just playing as one character. But yeah, unless this game comes to Steam, I guess I don't have much to say about it until then. And honestly, for video games, there's been plenty of times where you've had a character that just makes gibberish sounds or gestures, and it is super easy to get the general understanding of what they want you to do. So it's hardly an instance of trying to actually break through the language barrier, a difficult language barrier. Whereas if somebody wanted to make a real challenging game, they'd make a game in Esperanto or something even more obscure that nobody's ever heard of. And I think Never Alone might have some dialogue in First Tribes, I think is what they prefer to be called. Eskimos is what they're also known as, but they don't like that phrase from what I've heard. Yeah, that would be a real challenge to try and figure out a game like that. Plus, then you also have things like Riven, which decades ago had their own languages, and you had to figure out the number system and figure out as much as you could from the word. Let's see, Gemetsu has a 2.5D co-op beat-em up called Contract Killer being announced for PC, which seems to be several different writing implements in a beat-em up scenario. I think a beat-em up game might be a little too zoomed in at this angle. So, like, you have to really affect the field of view for these kinds of games. And I think this might be too much of a gag and not enough of a real game. Yeah, otherwise you're... So... I'd be cautious around playing that game or getting that game. Okay, I could play this and they'd probably die. Play this. No. So I think you have to do this.
Before you get burned.
And then hope that you can kill some things. And fail miserably. Here we have a game on Steam called Quick Packer 2, which this is one of those games simulating someone's job, and it looks terrible on top of that. I can't imagine anybody actually enjoys the act of packing things, and how many people actually move their oven range with them. That's laughable. Also, why would you put it on top of a box? That thing's going to be hugely heavy and right on top of a TV. $3.99, third-party EULA, which is ridiculous, and English only. How many people have a fully assembled bed and barrels? Like, clearly those are just assets that have been flipped. This.
Fear not, for I am here.
We're gonna evolve here.
Done for.
Preserve the peace. Pick up your sword.
And hit that.
At your service.
Next we have a game on Steam called Magic Sword, which just looks like a Chinese RPG. Way too much text. Very old looking. Free to play. Chinese only. Though on the language.
Come on, it'll be fun.
Let's see. Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yabai.
Fear death.
Hinokami Kiputan Sakoniji Urokadaki trailer and screenshots are now available. See, and this is called Demon Slayer and it's from Aniplex, but I don't know if this is the same Demon Slayer character. I think it is. So this must be, yeah, this guy in the green and black checkered coat is the main Demon Slayer character. There was some censorship that they bowed down to because he has these like earrings that have just a traditional red like sun on them, and people in China, basically in other places, took that to be the old Japanese flag. Here you can actually see that he's not wearing. Here they are right there. So it's just a pure white talisman with a red circle on it, and they think that's the Japanese military flag during World War II, which I don't even think was that flag. So it's just kind of a Asian cancel culture. Arguably, it is just really an example of China trying to spread its influence and bully the Japanese as much as they bully everybody else. Moving on, MiHoYo announces an otome called Romance X Detective X Adventure called Tears of Themis for iOS and Android, which seems like we're going to get several of the same concept nearly at the exact same time, which definitely goes to show that they heavily steal their ideas from each other, and very few anime or very few Japanese creators are actually that creative. But when they are creative, they can be amazingly creative. Although arguably, if you wanted to tell me that almost all creativity in Japan is directly from the fact that they are sneakily doing magic mushrooms, I would believe you. There definitely was a time when magic mushrooms were legal in Japan, and that was totally in line with the time that a lot of the really interesting content came from. And then a lot of the content since then has been kind of just coasting off of that point, or coasting off of those ideas.
You wouldn't.
Well, this next game has a topless person on it
Doing to my friends.
called Adventura Pisciculia Product, which sounds like Italian, and I cannot tell through the bad animation if this is supposed to be a topless man or a topless woman, so I'm just going to leave it at that. English is not supported. It's Romanian for $2.99, and as best as I can tell, it's a low effort MS Paint visual novel. Let's double check on what our goals are. Still need 3 Shadowcraft or Swordcraft, so we could try a Shadowcraft. Yoko Taro is working on a new digital-only title with Square Enix as creative director. A special physical edition may also be released. This is
Mother, father, come on.
this is the guy who I think worked on Nier Automata. This might also be the guy that wears the crazy moon head, because you kind of see the moon head there, but maybe not. If he's not wearing the moon head when taking a picture, that might be an indication that he has actually improved his anxiety a little bit, which that would be nice to hear, just for a general concern for humans' mental state. I'm sure that a lot of people's mental state declined quite a bit in the past 2 years and may never fully recover. Here we have a game on Steam called Infected Spaceship Generator, which, yep, it looks like it's a asset flip merging the maze generation with a first-person shooter and zombie game, which, not a terrible idea, because at a certain point then you're halfway to making an actual good roguelike game. It's just you'd have to be a little bit more concerned on putting some polish on it and make it a little less obvious that it is just random generation of mazes. Arguably, though, if Rogue Legacy was just random generation of maps and it didn't have very custom designed rooms, Rogue Legacy would really, really suck, because it is in the quality and polish of each individual tile being placed and then connected randomly to another tile that you have a good experience. You can't just have hallway after hallway after hallway.
I'm not a quack. You'll see.
You wouldn't.
That game is $1.39 in English only, so of course it's not making it to the vault list.
My mercy becometh justice.
According to Gemetsu, a tactical RPG, Empire of Angels 4 is coming to PS4, Xbox One, and Switch this summer. The series' first appearance on console, so it must have been a PC game up until this point. Apparently it's already on Steam, so we can get a little bit more. Definitely seems like it is an all-girl ensemble type game, but clearly is attracting the female liking gaze as far as the way it shows cleavage and outfits. But then it also seems like it goes down to these chibi art forms. This might be a Neptunia style game that's not quite as interesting as Neptunia. This does look very, very cutesy, and with its little chibi art style. It's inconsistent, frankly, to go with the chibi art style and go with the lewd outfits, because I seriously doubt you're going to catch a lot of people's attention as far as having actual desire to see chibi characters in lewd outfits. That makes no sense at all. And here we can see this game is on Steam and it's only mixed. So, yeah. Seems like people don't enjoy it that much. Turn-based strategy. We look at this developer and see what else they've made. We're seeing quite a collection of mostly mixed reviews, and the one good reviewed game is Zhang Yun's Sword of the Gate Firmament. Yep. Seems like this might be a Chinese developer. Yes, it is. They're trying, but I think they still have a way to go to improve their quality of game.
Under retreat.
The living are too proud.
Under retreat.
This is fairly big news. Amazon Game Studios has canceled its Lord of the Rings MMORPG. I think it is also kind of worth mentioning that, from what I heard, that this was a contract dispute between Amazon's Game Studios and Lee Yu's owner, Tencent. So Tencent also has some blame to bear on this. Supposedly after Tencent purchased Lee Yu, contract negotiations between Tencent and Amazon led to an argument between the two companies, which meant that the game couldn't go ahead. An Amazon spokesman said that Amazon had been unable to secure terms to proceed with this title. Okay. I don't know if a Lord of the Rings MMO would have really succeeded anyways, and it feels weird that they would have not also been in negotiation at the same time with WB, which has been kind of recently acquired by AT&T. So you've got several characters and elements to deal with. Several different people you would be negotiating with when, if you wanted to make an MMO and have it be a Tolkien-esque fantasy game, that would be fairly easy to make your own, or fairly easy to go to Bethesda and have them give you their technology for Elder Scrolls Online. Although maybe Bethesda wouldn't sell that, actually. But the Amazon Game Studios in general are pretty much unlikely to succeed at all. So I don't think they're going to turn out any games of note at all before the whole thing gets shut down. So this is probably the last bit of news we'll hear as far as Amazon Game Studios.
Why should the dead justify their anger?
Hey, don't run.
Under retreat!
I'm about to lose. I'm also about to be done with the news, which that's just shocking. Like, nothing came out over the weekend. Which does make an argument that I should probably stop news on Wednesday when I can see the beginning of the end. Which, with Steam Chrome, that means when I have a group of tabs that are grouped together, and they make a little blue dot. So when I see the blue dot, it would be able to use that as an element.
The dead justify their anger.
I'll show you.
Okay.
Death has no mouth, but it must scream. Your
Let's see.
funeral begins.
I think I have to win.
Ride or die. Death is sublime.
Here we have a game on Steam called Deichgraf, which sounds German. It looks like kind of a low effort city simulator. $4.24, English and German. We're kind of having a resurgence of German games. OpenCritic has an article here. Psychonauts 2 is still coming this year, says the studio, which Double Fine was acquired by Microsoft, so I don't see any reason why they wouldn't continue to say that right up until the point they announced that the whole project has been canceled. But it is also worth mentioning that Psychonauts 1, which is already in my Steam library, is 50% off. I don't understand. I guess this is just music. So I could get the soundtrack of The Cave and the VR game for $11.98. I haven't gotten around to play Psychonauts. There's really no justification for that. I should play it fairly quickly. Yeah, but if you haven't played it, I would also say same thing for you. There's very little justification to not play it these days.
Did he make it
Can
all
I use reasonably priced souls?
Let me see if this next game is YouTube family friendly. I think it is. Here we have this game on Steam called VR Retro Snake on Girls, which is, I believe, the game Snake drawn in 3D over top some anime pictures, which is kind of just like the worst depiction ever of a low effort game just trying to sell with anime footage and anime girls that maybe they licensed, maybe they stole, who knows. It is also the cheapest VR game I think I've ever seen at $1.19. It claims to support 15 languages. I seriously doubt that. Okay. 2 Shadowcraft cards.
To the dark.
Come out wherever you are.
Yeah, nothing's gonna save me there. And then we have a game on Steam called The Journey, Episode 1, whatever this is, which looks like a
Too strong.
low effort visual novel for $1.79, English only. I think we already talked about this, but GameStop CEO George Sherman will step down later this year. Lots of people at GameStop are stepping down. I think a lot of them probably had stock options and got very rich due to Wall Street bets and took that as an opportunity to leave the company. Although arguably, this might be the first example ever of paying someone to go away or improving a business to make people go away, and maybe they actually did get rid of the people that were going to be problems anyways. It's an insane way to accomplish anything, and at a certain point there are a lot of different scenarios in capitalism where this happens, but
You must die.
if somebody wanted just money and not to work, and then all of a sudden it was a scenario was contrived to make GameStop have to work and improve its business because there's just this groundswell of active support and love for the company, which arguably there's not even that much love for GameStop. Well, somebody that was just in it for the money and to sit on a board and make no decisions and not actually attend meetings, all of a sudden may think to themselves, now's the time to cash out, and that leaves a vacancy for somebody who is actually more ambitious and hopefully willing and wanting to do the right thing. Maybe it will work that way. Maybe it won't. Like, it could be the exact opposite scenario, though. It could have been all of the people that were on the GameStop board that left were the people that were actually trying to keep the place in business, and they've just decided to give up while the giving up is good. Or it could also be that they all insider traded and made a bunch of money and got caught, or it could be they all insider traded and made a bunch of money and are leaving before they get caught. Those are also scenarios. Or it could be that they're leaving the board with no relation, for no reason whatsoever, to the price stock. I would almost certainly assume that there is going to be a lot of eyes on GameStop going forward. So if they were to try to pull any kind of shenanigans financially, I think people would catch them. Moving on, OpenCritic has an article. Xbox Cloud Gaming arrives on PC and iOS starting tomorrow. So, okay. If you're doing the xCloud thing, iOS and PC expansions, at least in a beta format. I don't know if it's a beta or final version. It'll begin rolling out tomorrow. Whereas Stadia hasn't even been mentioned in probably about a month now. So I've seen a couple games say they're coming out for Stadia, and that's it. But I haven't heard Google say anything. arguably, if you separate Google from YouTube, Google has been fairly quiet in total for a year and a half. Maybe they've got a new Pixel phone they're making. Maybe they've got a new Nest hub or something they're making, but that's about it. Google as a company has sort of locked down. There was this whole thing they were working on as far as having a phone system deal with making schedules and making appointments for you. I don't know if that ever came out of any kind of finalized form, or if that was just a beta.
Just passing through. Let's speed things up. Too slow.
Next, we have a game on Steam called Regrowth, which seems to be a kind of seed spreading and grass growing simulator puzzle game, I guess. It's almost reminds me of like the grass spreading in Minecraft. I don't know if there's a whole game here for $8.99. 22 languages, full language, and all of them. Yeah.
You wouldn't.
There might be enough variety to make sense here, because you have like snails and bees and wanderers. I'm willing to put this on the fall list and see if people decide whether they like it or not, but I could also... I wouldn't be surprised if nobody actually does like it.
Easy does it. Easy does
See, if I'd evolved that guy...
I demand a rematch. The fishies are dancing. I guard Otohime. It won't be long now.
There's really no reason to have the Sea Queen Otohime in this deck.
Let's have some fun.
It's fairly useless.
The final oasis awaits.
See. Tech Raptor has an article here. Wave 2 of Project Deluge brings PS1, CDI, and Saturn prototypes. So Project Deluge is trying to preserve / rip prototype games. Like CDIs in particular, basically nobody had that. I remember watching the commercials for CDIs, and I desperately wanted one. That commercial over the night was very, very false advertising. The actual game for CDI interface and the games were terrible. Okay.
A prime target.
See, hit that.
I demand a rematch. You'll never
Hit
hurt
that.
Otohime. You'll never hurt
Hit
Otohime.
that.
I demand a rematch. You'll never hurt Otohime.
And hit that. Here we have a game on Steam called One Day of an Insurance Agent, which seems to be a combination of low effort puzzles and
Exemplary battle.
sort of a visual novel experience. Early access for no reason, free, English, Russian. Yeah, nothing there of interest. We already talked about that. At this rate, I am not going to get enough victories anywhere. See, next we have a game that's all Asian letters, which looks like a nicely animated visual novel. You've got a fox girl and a Japanese guy in ancient formal clothing. That's about it. English was not supported. $17.99 Chinese and full Japanese.
This one's for my family.
So doesn't look terrible, but also doesn't support English, so can't really do anything about that. think the idea is to discard this and then summon it with necromancy. Let's see, Microsoft has a blog post here. The Xbox update is here, and new Xbox app leaderboards, new Game Pass features, and more. So you can view leaderboards and achievements on game detail pages in the mobile app, discover more games with recommendations and collections coming to Xbox Game Pass, and join friends games on console with Play It with Friends, and download your games as quickly as possible with the new Suspend Game feature. Here you can see some pictures of, I guess, the mobile app. Achievements. I also talked about it's nice to see Microsoft is still working on their interface, but since I don't play on Microsoft anymore, I think it's kind of pointless for me to pay too much attention to that. I'll just say check out the article yourself if you're interested. I could see myself getting an Xbox Series S, though, just for the Blu-ray player capability, but even that would be kind of crazy. Alright, so G4 has a new host they've announced called Kasim G. I have no idea who this is. If he's some kind of comedian or whatever. And inherently that's the problem, is that they could hire any number of streamers and any number of comedians, and I won't have even heard of them at all. And it kind of doesn't matter either who they are, because as we continue to be in this B4 G4 element of trying to build up hype for G4, the content that they're making is, of what little content there actually is, it's not what I kind of want from G4. And I'm not sure there is anything I actually want from G4 in 2021. I wanted G4 in like 1997, quite a while ago. Like, here's your quality content made by G4. Adam Sessler dancing as a GIF. Yeah. And kind of nothing else. And then they're just kind of meme tweeting. Yeah. So, yeah, I've really yet to see any quality product from them, or any quality offering, and until they can show that they do have a decent offering or a decent lineup of content, I have no reason to get hyped on it. I mean, honestly, with Geek and Sundry as a learning, a lesson I learned from, getting big into G4 just to be disappointed 2 or 3 years down the line, it's probably not something I'm willing to do. And more than likely I would withhold judgment on G4 and watch very little of it until I am absolutely certain that there's going to be any consistency there. This would also be the second time that since the original G4 that Adam Sessler has joined a company, a new game company, and it didn't work the last time, so I'm not sure it's going to work this time. I kind of would like to hear Adam Sessler come out and talk about running Revision 3 games and say where he felt mistakes were made and where he's going to make sure that those mistakes aren't repeated. Because if those mistakes are repeated, then what's the point? Or if Adam Sussler thinks everything at Revision 3 Games went perfectly, then there's a problem there, because obviously it didn't. It didn't succeed. Didn't get people's eyes. And arguably that might be the problem, is that G4 as a cable channel probably got way more eyes in front of it than any G4 YouTube channel will get nowadays. Alright, let's go with this and see what happens.
Is that a human?
Want to play?
I'm done sticking my head.
go ahead and hit
Told
that.
you to leave.
Did I predict wrong?
Next we have a game on Steam called Saints and Sinners, which is weird because I think there's a Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, and this doesn't look like it. This kind of looks like nothing. It's early access, $5.49. It's an online PvP game with 7 languages being supported. Yeah, I don't see anything interesting in it though, so I'm not going to bother to put it on the follow list. What can we do to destroy something? +2. Alright. Restore this much. Necromancy 4. I think you gotta do this. And then
Can I interest you in
that.
reasonably priced souls?
Do that. That was a mistake.
We're over. I'm tired already. Huh? Are we done?
Yeah, I've lost. Next, we have a game on Steam called Dawn of the Others, which looks like nothing. Although it does kind of remind me of Shadow Man, and I did look at a Digital Foundry video comparing the different versions of Shadow Man. Apparently there was a PlayStation 1 version and a previous PC version, and so the new remaster really is a remaster more than I thought. They just kind of couldn't bring the graphics to look like a brand new game, as it were. And there is new content in it, and I think it is probably a lot more playable now than the old PC version, which would have been your really only other option. Dawn of the Others is not going on the follow list, of course. Here we have a game on Steam called Drift Funk 666, which looks like it's just a gravity frustration platformer game for 74 cents.
You must die.
Shifting the walls around, avoiding buzzsaws. It's kind of like a racing game, I suppose, a drifting racing game. Yeah, nothing there of interest. Next we have a game called Forestcraft Chapter 1, which looks completely like a Minecraft ripoff and clone. And I don't know why you'd sell chapters. $7.49, English only. The only thing I would say is at least this is on Steam, where Minecraft is not on Steam. And I would have thought Microsoft would have, at this point, just said, hey, let's just put the Java edition on Steam, or the Bedrock edition on Steam, whichever one they care the most about, if not both editions, and get a few more sales, because I doubt there are too many new people buying Minecraft at this point. And you might want to release it on a new platform with the Caves and Cliffs update to catch people's attention. and maybe get people to double dip and get back into Minecraft. Let's see.
Don't call me short.
Too slow.
No.
Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Forgetter, which is either a horror walking simulator or it's an asset flip game with a lot of garbage.
What to capture?
It's tagged as a walking simulator, though, so the fact that you have some scenes where it looks like you have an axe and a gun in your hand is weird. And it just kind of feels like it's all over the place. Early access, $6.29, English and traditional Chinese. I'm going to put this on the follow list, but almost certainly it's going to get negatively reviewed, I think, eventually. So a whole bunch of early access reviews that are somewhat suspect, since this game came out just a couple days ago. And the fact that I'm looking at games that came out just a couple days ago, I think also highlights that there's some weirdness going on. I need to wait till 6th turn, which means play this instead.
Raise your blade.
And
You're done for.
I
let's
shall
just hit
overcome
this.
all by the Knight's Code. Behold, true masterwork.
I haven't decided whether or not I'm going to cover Humble Bundles anymore, but for the moment I'm not going to bother to check every day because we weren't getting new Humble Bundles anyways. So what I think I might do is simply limit it to Mondays, and then on Tuesdays and Thursdays don't check for new Humble Bundles because they don't come that often. And that maybe I'll just stop mentioning Humble Bundles in general and maybe stop checking them in my own private time in general. It really isn't the first time though that there have been Humble Bundles where you couldn't choose where the money was going. So it's kind of weird to be upset about that now, and this isn't the first time they've done that. If anything, I should have been upset with them, like when they kind of started to push more and more sales that didn't go to any charity and were just trying to make money for themselves. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Food Delivery Service, which looks like it's a low-effort job simulator. It's mixed reviewed already, $2.69, English and Japanese. Yeah, same old scenario. Who wants to play somebody else's job? Right. This, and then this.
To arms, brother. At your
The light
service.
of courage will pierce the darkness.
And then
Shine forth. You can count
this.
on me, Risha.
Best of luck to you.
And that.
Show's over.
And do we want to evolve anything? Sure.
It all ends here.
What do you wish to? What do you think you're doing?
There we go. Let's see. Next game is tagged as having sexual content, so let me make sure it's YouTube family friendly in the screenshots at least.
Golly, it's chilly here.
Seems like it is.
It won't be long now.
So we have a game on Steam here called Fallen Labyrinth, which to anime moe girls, which I think kind of highlights a point here, is that if Valve was kind of upset with the moe art style, this one seems to be going with the moe art style, although she does have fairly large cleavage for whatever age you'd attribute to that. This elf girl, definitely. Also, both of them kind of in school uniforms. If you want to take them as school uniforms, I guess you can also take them as just other kinds of uniforms. This is fairly obvious sailor suit style uniform. Evolve.
Escape my a prime target.
Do that.
I feel
No one gets
Hit
past me.
that.
I feel
What do you think you're
That.
doing?
This is our way out.
And that. Ball and Labyrinth is selling for $17.99. It's English, Japanese full audio, and then Chinese. And scrolling down anymore, I'm seeing they're showing off the main character in many different outfits. Mature content, it says some scenes of the game will appear bare and sexually suggestive content that is not suitable for minors. Please decide whether to play or not. A lot of this is translated poorly from Japanese, obviously.
About freedom.
What's the clash here? Clash is the gains
Target.
+1/+1.
A prime target.
Oh, waffle cakes.
Let's see.
I'm here, just like I said in my tip-off note. An honest day's work.
This wasn't worth it.
There we go.
What do you think you're doing?
Hit that.
This is our way out.
And hit that. In the turn. Next, we have a game on Steam called Duckman, which is just a platformer.
You're not strong enough.
So this is
Kind of nothing. $2.39, English and Russian. A lot of English and Russian games today. Next, we have a game called Relax It's Aqua, which looks like a low-effort aquarium simulator for $5.99, English only. Let's see, we have about 12. 3 damage to an enemy follower. Let's do that.
You're gonna feel the impact, brother.
Oh, waffle cakes.
And I guess do that,
a prime target.
that,
Not here.
He does it.
that,
Too slow.
and that. Gamma Sutra has a job listing here for Airship Syndicate as a producer,
And I'll burn you.
which is a remote job.
Burn you.
I'm not sure what Airship Syndicate
I'm through.
has worked on before, though. What's funny is this is a remote job, but some of the things they're saying here are office movie lunches, which probably don't happen now, snacks, which wouldn't matter for a remote job, ping pong with a leaderboard, and one sick MAME cabinet, which, like, those are not really things you should be advertising for a mid-level and upper-level management job in general. Well, we still would need 2 more victories plus 4 more victories, so we still have got quite a way to go. I'll play one more game. Let's see. Gamma Sutra also has the Games Fund launches with a $50 million to support devs in the US and Europe, which okay. Oh, that sounds interesting.
You must die.
Here we have a game on Steam called Go Do Do, which seems to be a collection of Hand-drawn mini games. There's a few of them, but maybe 4 or 5. You control it by voice or touch, which kind of means it won't work on playing on PC for most people. $3.39. Yeah, you would need a touchscreen or a voice controller, which only really makes sense for a cell phone game. And that's probably what it is originally. Let's see. Gematsu's Story of Seasons, Pioneers of Olive Town interview with director Hikaru Nakano, which I guess if you're interested, you can read that article.
Let's speed things up. Too slow.
See, Steam has a game called Resilience 2043, which looks like a VR game, and seems like you jump from point to point to defeat them. It's free. It's English full audio. I don't think there's quite enough of a gameplay concept here, but it might work visually, maybe. The jumping and shooting in procedurally generated areas.
My ally is justice. Too slow.
It's more of a tech demo than an actual game, though. That's the problem. See, Nier Replicant has a Shinjuku version 0.25 New Game Plus TV commercial, which, see, Nier Replicant seems to be set in a time much earlier than Nier Automata at this rate, because the cities still seem to be somewhat intact, where Nier Automata, most of the cities, the human cities, had been completely destroyed from every scene I've seen. Of course, it could also just be far in the future again. Lastly, we have a game on Steam called Soul Challenge, which is obviously just a mess of random garbage. Just visual assets, free to play, English only. And that's it as far as things I have to look at, so I'm gonna go through my Twitter feed, just quickly check Humble Bundle. Yeah, no new bundle, but the Spring into VR bundle is going to end. And now it's time to just scroll down my Twitter feed and cover other things. Let's see. Wait till the 6th turn to do that. So I'm just gonna play this, hit that, and in return. Susan Wojcicki quickly tweeted something new out, so it's not our newest tweet, congratulating someone for 12 years at YouTube. Which 12 years at YouTube. Today marks my 12th anniversary on my YouTube channel, Nathy VR. I just got wrecked. I don't recognize this person, but that's fine. Also, it seems like she's into VR games or VR things in general, so not super surprising I haven't heard of her. Hmm. Hmm. WB Games Montreal is hiring several VFX artists after they delayed the latest Batman game. I assume that's what they're working on in the Montreal area office. Hmm. Hmm. Games Workshop halts Warhammer pre-orders for 2 weeks because they're making some changes to the storefront or something. I wouldn't be surprised if Games Workshop is really going out of business. There is a pinball table called Black Knight and a sequel called Black Knight 2000. So the joke would be to make a Black Knight 20,000 for the third game in the series if you're going to make a pinball table. And the bigger joke that I had on top of that is have a limited edition of Black Knight 20,000 that was actually Black Knight 40K, and it had all of the Black Knight imagery reskinned as Warhammer 40K characters. But that almost certainly will not happen, so that was just my own internal joke on a joke on a joke. And sometimes putting a hat on top of a hat on top of a hat is funny, sometimes it isn't. You have to be careful. Anyway, still scrolling down my Twitter feed. Konami trademarks Castlevania and Metal Gear Rising in Japan, which probably means they renewed their trademarks. Mr. Beast is at the center of a Magic the Gathering Arena giveaway, and 2 lucky players will win 25,000 piece later this week. He's basically trying to manipulate the algorithm for more subscribers and more views and more likes, obviously, but in part that is also the fault of Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast more than anybody. Giving away 25,000 is way worse than giving away $1 to $1 worth of content to 25,000 individual arena players. In a funny way, Wizards of the Coast can easily afford $25,000 worth of cards, particularly, and I imagine that's really what they're giving you, is their guesstimate of what $25,000 worth of cards on Arena is. I'm not even sure you really could get a argument, most people to agree that if you had all the cards in every form, in every version on Arena, whether that really is worth 25,000, because there'd be a lot of people that says it actually has no cash value whatsoever, because you can't cash out those cards and sell them or trade them like you could for other card games. There was a different Magic the Gathering game site. See, now I'm just scrolling down the other Twitter feeds I check now. Guess the PlayStation Store for PS3 and Vita staying online is a partial reverse, not a full reverse. I think they probably still are shutting down some stuff. Okay, well, Here we have an updated Tech Raptor thing. Some old Rockstar games, Steam games, have mysteriously returned. Which is weird because I didn't know any of these games had left the storefront. See, the addition and removal of Rockstar Steam games is still going on at this time of the update. Midnight Club 2, for example, is once again unavailable for purchase. So if you're wanting it, keep an eye out as it might relist at some point with the chaos. We'll continue to monitor the situation. So, yeah. Let's see. So, here, this is available for purchase and it's on my wish list. I think that was listed already. So if they would delist it at some point, like this one is back to only being in a bundle, which that's probably the only way I'd buy it, and that's probably the reason why I haven't bought it. This is delisted again. So yeah, that's some weirdness. Not super surprising though that doesn't happen in a lot of places. Gemetsu has an article. Celeste developer is extremely... The developer's name is Extremely OK Games. It has announced a 2D exploration game called Earthblade. Okay. That sounds interesting. Apex Legends Mobile has been announced for iOS and Android, according to Gematsu. Which, I don't know how many people are playing Apex Legends anymore. Here we have a game on Steam called Blood of Darkness that seems to be all over the place with its art style. Yeah, I can't trust a game that looks like this. Early access for $1.69 in English and Russian. Here's Gematsu's. Konami trademarks Castlevania and Metal Gear Rising in Japan. The Japanese name Akuma Joe Dracula, which is the Japanese name for the Castlevania series, and Metal Gear Rising, which that probably doesn't mean much of anything. And then we talked about the story earlier today. Now the Path of Exile developers apologize to players for letting streamers skip login queues. But even a fast reaction was only enough for them to create a controversy to catch my attention, to make me realize I don't want to play Path of Exile because it's too old and because it's always online and apparently the characters reset. Or it's just too complicated, the game in general. If this controversy had not happened, I literally would have had Path of Exile on my wish list. Somebody very possibly would have gifted me that game and I would have covered it, not knowing anything about the controversy at all, as minor as this controversy kind of is. Anyways, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wish list. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.